4th, 2015, Van Halen played their last show. And then on October 6th, Eddie Van Halen died in 2020. Interesting.
And on October 6th, 1995 is when Van Halen got their
Walk of Fame. Walk of Fame.
Star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame.
Isn't that weird? Unbelievable. Right? Unbelievable. Yeah. Wow. So now he also talked about Jamie's crying, and he played a recording of Jamie's crying, not the whole thing, but he played the ending. The ending was different. It had sort of an extra segment that got edited out, which is sort of interesting to hear. And
it didn't fade out at the end.
No, it didn't fade out, right. It played like a little more of a traditional ending. Now, they also looked up some of the invoices. He says they booked 25 songs, and they're trying to figure out what were those 25 songs. Listen, some stuff gets lost in the shuffle. It's hard to figure out. And he says it could be different takes, take 1, take 2, but very often they didn't have a lot of takes, he said. He said it was a rare case. But he said apparently they came into the studio at Sunset Sound and for 3 days in April of 77 and laid down everything they had for Ted to hear everything they had. And then they ended up working on it over the summer and all the way up into December of 77. He said they used to work during the day, believe it or not, which were the less preferred hours, and I guess they were a band that, obviously didn't have prominence. So, for example, if Cher was coming in the evening, they said, well, Van Halen, you're working noon to 6, and you got to be out by 6 because Cher's coming in at 7. So they would do stuff like that.
Right, but I think that was also preferred by Van Halen because they probably had gigs in the evening.
Yes, he did say that very often they'd have gigs in the evening after working in the studio all day. He also said there were 3 mixes of Ain't Talking About Love that were finished all the way up into December 30th, 1977. He said there's 1 or 2 takes of Intruder with different guitar tracks, and it says David Lee Roth was on keyboards there in a very simple keyboard part, nothing special. So This Is Love, they talked about being put together in multiple pieces, that the solo was kind of pieced together. He said that the strongest sounding album is hands down Fair Warning. He also said that he looked for the recording of the Minnie Moog song, the song that Eddie was going to make out of the Dancing in the Streets part that he ended up adding onto the cover, the one that caused a big riff with him and Ted. But no one can find that. And he also said that there's no demo tape without the main hiss that you find in the original demo tape about Van Halen. He said he's very worried about leaks, things leaking out. He says once things leak out, the record company tends to not want to release them. So he's hoping that they possibly get together and do some sort of proper release. The Sunset Sound guys said they're also trying to get Don Landy in for an interview, which would be monumental because the guy has not been around. He also said they're going to speak to Peggy McCreary, who is an assistant engineer. We talked about Alex's sound. He said the drum sound changed from the first 2 albums. He said there was a fatter, warmer sound in the first 2 albums and it had more of an attack on the snare on later records. He said it was not crackly, but more honk to it, he says.
Well, that's interesting because a lot of people say Alex's drum sound. He really didn't have that Alex Van Halen drum sound until like Women and Children First.
Yes, this is exactly what he said. This is exactly what he said. He said the first 2 albums were totally different than the rest of the albums. He also said that Out of Love Again was one of the best Alex Van Halen performances. He said it's almost jazz-like. He said this whole situation is like after the meal, you always look for the scraps. Hopefully, he says that there's more out there. It was literally, 2 hours, Dave? It was 3 parts.
Yeah, it was about 2 hours in total for all 3 parts, yeah.
It was unbelievable.
And you hit all the highlights. Fantastic summary.
Yeah.
I'm glad the summary didn't take 2 hours.
Okay.
2 other tidbits I wanted to mention is that Dave's vocal coach, who you talked about before, was a cantor at a temple.
Oh, okay.
Which I found interesting. That was the guy who Greg also talked about. Greg Renoff in his first, in his only Van Halen book, but the one before Ted. Mm-hmm. He had mentioned that Dave had gotten vocal lessons before they started recording the first album.
Right.
Because Dave knew he was the weak link, and he did not want to be the weak link, so he really worked on his voice for that first album.
Absolutely.
Because he knew Ted was not a fan.
Well, he won him over.
Right?
Yeah.
Exactly. And the other thing I want to mention is that Brian had mentioned that when he was putting this together, he was working with Bill Inglot. Now, Bill Inglot, I was sold the second he said his name, because Bill Inglot worked on the early Monkees reissues back in the day in the mid-'80s when the Monkees had a resurgence.
Okay.
And he was the guy who went into the vaults and released albums. Like the first one was called Missing Links.
Right.
All songs that had never seen the light of day. And he was really the guy who started all that. And then eventually another guy named Andrew Sandoval took it over. Andrew speaks very highly of Bill. He learned a lot of things from Bill. And so the fact that Bill was involved was music to my ears, because this is what Bill does. The fact he was involved with it with Brian, that's a very good thing, because he's a well-known name in that. I was really super excited to hear that there's 4 CDs of stuff that he deemed worthy of releasing. And, hopefully Al or whomever will take a listen to it and say, now's the time. Yeah. I mean, it's been 15 years. That's the thing. Like, they've been sitting on somebody's shelf for 15 years.
I know. And I have to say, listen, if you do not jump on this now, forget it. Because, listen, everybody's getting older. I mean, this is insane. I mean, what are we going to wait until we're like 65 years old? This is ridiculous. There is so much on the shelf that is done. Just release it. The Balance DVD, the 2007, 2008 DVD, the Gary Live album, the old Gary album from Van Halen 4, whatever you want to call it. At this point, let the fucking hounds loose. I mean, take the box set out. I mean, just put out the tracks of David Lee Roth from 2001. I mean, it's unbelievable. There's so much stuff out there. The unreleased Sammy stuff, just put it all together and get it the fuck out. It's ridiculous. I don't know what anybody's waiting for.
You just have to find band members that are willing to do that.
Well, listen, Sammy doesn't count. Michael doesn't count. I mean, no one counts at this point but Al. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, I guess Wolf is... I don't know what the stipulation is. I don't know if Wolf is in control of this or not. He may not even be. I'm sure Al is the guy, but it's crazy. The bottom line is, and it's not even about me or you or wanting this stuff. Guys, think of the timing. If you don't keep this momentum going to keep the legacy alive, what is it going to hurt? It's only going to make Van Halen's legacy deeper and grow even more, because or else the fan base is going to dissipate, because there's no music, no live shows, no nothing. You got to keep it going. Listen, just talk to Jimmy Page. He's the curator of the Led Zeppelin legacy. John Paul Jones is not involved. Robert Plant wants nothing to do with it. Bonzo is dead. Jimmy is always digging and shining up stuff from all eras. For Christ's sake, he's done so much that he's now looking at polishing up some Coverdale Page stuff. Do you hear about that?
Yes, I did, and I am super excited about that.
Oh, my God. I actually talked to Dave Coverdale myself when I interviewed him, and I said, this is back in the 25th anniversary, okay, of the Coverdale Page album. And I said, you do realize it's the anniversary? I said, what are you guys doing? Put out the live shows from Japan. Put out some of the extra tracks. He's like, I know, I should do that, darling. So, yeah.
I find it fantastic that you are so friendly with David Coverdale that you refer to him as Dave Coverdale.
Oh, so yes, of course. Yes, I call him DC myself.
Oh, okay. You call him DC?
Yes, those are my initials as well.
Right. That's true. But, David Coverdale himself has been on a reissue kick.
Oh, yeah. Past, no, big time.
5+ years. So he's also curating his legacy.
Yes, he is. He's done a great job with the Whitesnake stuff. Anyway, moving on, we have words from Wolf. Okay, so, all right, guys, this is a really sad one. This is tough to read, but I'm going to read it because it's important. Okay, so this is rough. So now, a month after Ed's passing, Wolf tweeted, and he said, not a second goes by where you're not on my mind. I miss talking with you. I miss laughing with you. I miss listening to music with you. I miss making music with you. I just miss everything. I love you so much, Pop. It's really hard being here without you. And this beautiful picture of Wolf and Ed, and my God, Valerie must have cried her goddamn eyes out when she read this, but it was such a loving and beautiful tribute that he wrote to his dad. It's unbelievable what a sweet kid this guy is. You know, it's just so sad, and I really feel for him. And I really feel for Al, and I really feel for Janie, I really feel for Val. They're really having a hard time, and obviously it just seems to be just rough for them, you know? I mean, I don't know what's going to happen from here, but I'm sure, you know, they're going to do something to keep Eddie's legacy going, for sure, in some capacity with music, because, look, that's what Ed did, you know? And I remember Ed saying in interviews, someday when I'm gone, this will all come out. That's what he said. And I don't think he had a problem with it, if I remember correctly. Anyway, you know, some people are just absolute malicious bastards out there, and they're making all kinds of nasty comments to Wolf, which is just so sick and so gross. Metal Sludge came out with this whole thing talking about only time will tell if Wolf Van Halen, Alex Van Halen, Sammy Hagar, and Michael Anthony will bring Van Halen to the masses. What you say? And Wolf said, this is just a shitty lie attempting to capitalize on these awful times. Please stop this. Anyone peddling this shit is not only hurting the fans, but hurting me and my family. So he was not happy with that. Then he was mad about this shirt that was, I think on the internet, they were selling some sort of bootleg Eddie Van Halen memorial shirt, and they photoshopped Al's head on somebody's body holding the shirt up. He was not happy with that. He says, look at this fucking picture.
Yeah, he is not being quiet about it.
Oh, no. And he says, pathetic photo job. He was mad with Us Weekly promoting a cover with Valerie on it, talking about, like, her pain and loss with Ed dying, and he said she did not do an interview for this, you know, obviously. But listen, I know he's angry, but this stuff is going to happen because Val's well-known, and so was Ed, and, you know, people are going to write what they're going to write, and look, they're just trying to sell magazines is what they're doing, but, you know, he's going after people that are making these nasty comments to him. I mean, this one fucking asshole said, hey, dog, you stole Michael Anthony's job, now stay silent and be a good boy. I mean, it's disgusting. I mean, people, just leave him the fuck alone. I mean, this is just insane.
Yeah, we shouldn't even be acknowledging whatever.
Well, listen, no, I'm just acknowledging that it's out there and that he's defending it. The reason why I'm saying it is because he's defending it. He's actually talking about it. He's just telling people to go fuck themselves. He's not shy about it, which is good. You know, I think it's strong that he's standing up to it. Listen, he shouldn't just sit back and take lumps. I understand where he's saying, and he says, you know, he has a little fun with it and jokes around, and we'll have to see what happens from here. What do you make of all that, Dave?
Well, you know, it's still raw for him.
Mm-hmm.
It's only been a month. He's angry. He's not like his dad, where he whatever's said on the internet.
He didn't care.
Ed could not have cared less.
Yeah, exactly.
And you know, we've spoken about that before. Like, there's a happy medium, but you know, Wolf, you know, he's got no problem shooting crap down. So I give him a lot of credit for that. It's just, you know, it's a tough time. I get it. He obviously misses his dad.
Yeah,
he was really, really close to him.
Yeah.
So you know, it takes time. It hurts, man.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And speaking of his dad, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame did a tribute to Eddie Van Halen in their recent induction ceremony. Obviously, Eddie's already in the Hall of Fame, but of course, Eddie's passing, and in the in memoriam section, my God, you can't do anything but talk about Ed right at the tip top. So they had a brief, quick, sort of at the top of the in memoriam section talking about Eddie, where Slash spoke, Tom Morello from Rage Against the Machine, as well as Kirk Hammett from Metallica, and they each talked about Eddie and his incredible influence on guitars. All three guys were heavily influenced by him. They played live clips of Ed. What was that black and white live recording of Ed? I don't know. Was that a clip from Right Here, Right Now? I don't remember.
I'm not sure. I know they had clips from the Us Festival.
Yeah, and they had clips from the Unleashed special from MTV, and they had clips from Live Without a Net. I don't know if that's on. I have to remember if Live Right Here, Right Now had any of those black and white clips of that, or is leftover stuff.
I couldn't place that one.
Yeah. And interesting enough, Irving Azoff, Van Halen's manager, was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame with the Ahmet Ertegun Award, and not a mention of Van Halen. The Eagles, Stevie Nicks, Adam Levine from Maroon 5, Gwen Stefani, Earth, Wind, and Fire all spoke on his behalf. Not even a mention of Van Halen, but he did introduce himself. Hi, I'm Irving Azoff. Don Henley's Satan, because you remember Don Henley's famous line, he's Satan, but he's our Satan.
Right.
So that was interesting.
Right.
It's no mention of Van Halen at all, which I thought was strange. What can you say? Anything to say on that?
No, if you didn't feel like talking about it, then I don't feel like talking about it.
Okay. Well, more Eddie of